Today we're building an NZXT's 2024 version of the H5 Flow. This is the RGB version that comes with a front NZXT F360 fan unit. The glass side panel easily pops off, no thumb screws, just these durable clips. The rear panel does have a couple of thumb screws holding it down that you have to remove before you pull the panel off. Each side of the case is vented at the bottom, allowing fresh air to be brought into the GPU and PSU area. The top panel is held by a single thumb screw. Removing this panel, you reveal the mounting spots for your top fans or radiator. This case says it does not support a 280mm radiator, but we're going to put one in anyways and see how it goes. Don't tell NZXT we're doing this. The front panel is held in by clips as well, and it easily pops off. No dust filter, just these stylish perforations. The front fan unit is 3 separate fans, all powered by one cable, so if one of the fan fails, the whole unit is lost. Here's a look at the main compartment of the case. A lot of big, gaping holes for cable management. I like. Here's a better look at the cable management from the back. A lot of channels, holes, straps, zip tie anchor points. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but cable management in this case is very easy. NZXT has been around since 2004, so trust that they know what they're doing, because they do. Let's take a look at this accessory box. Pretty poor if you ask me. It's just a box. Companies like Lee & Lee and Vantex give you those little plastic fish tackle box where you can organize everything. It comes with all your screws needed for the build and a generous amount of zip ties, which is mucho appreciato. Let's unbag the front panel connectors. It comes with, just the standard stuff. One USB-A, one USB-C, front panel audio, front panel power button. Here's where the power supply goes underneath. There is no air intake for the PSU on the bottom, which is kind of weird. So I'm going to mount the PSU with the fan facing up. You probably still could mount it with the fan facing down because there still is way for air to get in down there. I'm going to remove this hard drive cage because I don't need it. It can house one 3.5-inch hard drive and two 2.5-inch SSDs. Here's a look at NZXT's cable management hider bar, whatever it is that they call it. I'm going to remove it because I don't feel like trying to bend the cables around it as I'm trying to plug every cable into the motherboard. I'll put it back on when all the cables are plugged in. Here's another look at the front bezel. If you wanted to install a radiator or different fans up here, it could easily be done. The CPU I'm going to use in this is a 9950X. It's high-end and produces enough heat to warrant a 280mm all-in-one cooler. I already mentioned that a 280mm is not supported, but we're going to make it work, believe me. And because I'm using a 280mm radiator, RAM choice is important here. The RAM I chose has pretty tall heat sinks on them. Hopefully this isn't a problem, but I am a bit concerned. If it does present a problem, I'll just switch it out with some lower profile sticks. Even though there is a lot of room in the H5 Flow to work in once the motherboard is in, I always like to install my cooler mounting hardware while the board is still outside of the case. The H5 Flow comes with one of those riser motherboard standoff screw things in the middle, which allows you to place and line up the motherboard with the case upright, so you don't have to tilt it over and get it on its side to put the motherboard in. And all the screw spots are very easy to get to. No problems there. Alright, let's get this PSU in and secured. Alright, now it's time to plug in some stuff into the motherboard and tackle some of this cable management. And this is where the H5 Flow shines in my opinion. Running all the cables is easy. The cable management design in this case is almost perfect. Here I'm running the CPU 8-pin connectors. Being able to just fish cables to where I want them to go makes for an easy build. Alright, I don't like how I ran this. The 8-pin cables are actually meant to go over here in the rear, so I'm just going to change this up. Beautiful. Next is the 24-pin power cable. Pretty straightforward. Plug it into the motherboard and then manage the cable using the built-in straps at the back. This GPU power cable is going to come out at the front anyway, so let's just get it out of the way for now. All right, let's absolutely obliterate the dreaded front panel connectors. First, let's take care of the front panel audio connector. Next, the front panel power connector. Then, the front panel USB ports. This is the USB-C connector. And this is the USB-A connector. And lastly, the front fan power and RGB connector. There's no right or wrong way or rhyme of reason how you want to run these cables. You can go any which way direction you want. I'm going to reiterate this again. NZXT has their cable management down packed. I almost forgot the rear fan power connector. Just an FYI, this stock fan is a 3-pin DC fan. It is not a 4-pin PWM fan. Same as the front 360 fan. Okay, I'm adding a couple of Arctic P12s as intake down here. The air will be brought in from the vented side panels. NZXT supplies the screws that you need to mount these fans. Once the fans are mounted, the cables can be fished underneath and brought back to the fan connector on the motherboard after the fans are all daisy chained up. So that's what I'm doing here. This is the RGB connector. It goes into the motherboard. And this is the PWM power for these two daisy chained Arctic fans. Very easy to install and plug everything in this case. And let's get this all tidied up while we're back here. It's time for the all-in-one cooler. This is the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 280mm. And it doesn't fit with my RAM sticks. We need some lower profile sticks. So I'm going to switch these G-skills with these G-skills, and hopefully it all works out. Let's try that again and pray it works, or else we can't use a 280 up top here. And phew, it does fit. Close call. And when I say close call, I mean very close call. The radiator is basically touching the RAM sticks, and it's basically touching the motherboard as well. Alright, this Arctic cooler has 3 plugs that I have to plug into the motherboard. One for the pump, one for the fans, and one for the VRM fan. And there is no room to be able to do all this with the radiator up top there. All my plugs are behind that radiator, so I'll have to backtrack a bit and run these cables with the rad uninstalled. Thankfully, the Liquid Freezer 3 cables can be removed from the block, so I can run the connectors first, then I'll be able to plug it in after everything is in place. Cause I ain't gonna be able to do any of this with that rad installed. So let's just plug this cable in, and kind of loop it around and just leave it in hot standby, ready and waiting to be plugged in. Arctic sent me this Liquid Freezer 3. It is one of the best coolers on the market. The price is very competitive, and I do recommend it. It's a very good cooler. All right, let's tip this thing over and plop some of this included Arctic thermal paste MX6 and get the block mounted to the Ryzen. Oh yeah, just like that. Once again, very easy to access the block when you're screwing it in. There's so much room in the NZXT to be able to easily mount the block to the CPU. And I did plug the power cables in there that I left in hot standby a moment ago. So now that that's done, let's get our 4080 Super installed. This is an MSI Gaming Slim 4080 Super video card that I'll be putting in here. Wait, I almost made a terrible mistake. Before the GPU goes in, we have to get the cable hider bar thingy back in place because there's no way it'll go in if the GPU is in. And oh yeah, I had to take that rad out again to be able to get the bar back in. F my life. Okay, now the GPU can go in. So let's get it clicked into the top PCI Express slot, and then we'll secure it into place. And that pretty much does it. This case is very simple to build in. If you want to use a 280mm radiator up top, it can be done, but make sure you pick the right RAM. The cable management features of this case are impeccable, and they're actually surprisingly very bare bones and basic, and very user friendly, and they just do what they're supposed to do. There's so many cases out there that are over-designed and over-engineered. You're spending so much money on some of these cases and you don't even use a lot of the features. This case is not one of them. You're using all the money that you buy this case with, if that makes sense. One of the best things about this case is the vented side panels. They're great for GPU cooling, especially if you're adding some fans at the bottom like I did in this build. It's also a very aesthetic and stylish looking case. I do wish though it had better support up top for radiators. Like I said earlier a few times, NZXT has been around for a long time. They know what they're doing, they know what makes a decent case, they know where to put the money into the features when making a case. My first ever case was actually an NZXT Tempest back in 2009, and I've been a fan ever since. So anyways, let's get all these side panels back on and get this bad boy spooled up.